So I was raised next door to my grandparents for the first 8 years of my life. My granddad was a mechanic, had a shop behind his house, which, of course, when you're a little boy, is a great place to go and just hang out and get greasy and dirty. And then when I got a little bit older, he actually used me for things that required more than one person, like bleeding breaks and stuff like that. So my grandparents on my mom's side had a tremendous amount of influence on me as a young child and really throughout many of my early days and much of my life. My grandmother, her favorite verse was 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 7. Cast all your anxiety upon him because he cares for you. Now, I don't know, have you, if you see a verse, it reminds you of someone. Or you hear a song and it reminds you of someone. That doesn't mean it has to be a good memory, but it just reminds you of somebody, and or maybe remind you of a place or something. So every time I think about my grandmother or I hear that verse, I think about her. Well, today in 2 Kings chapter 6, we're going to read about that verse put into practice, about God caring for his people. So if you'll turn to 2 Kings chapter 6. I'm going to read two accounts about God taking care of his people. 2 Kings chapter 6. The first account is found in the first 7 verses. Now the sons of the prophets said to Elisha, "See, the place where we dwell under your charge is too small for us. Let us go to the Jordan, and each of us get there a log, and let us make a place for us to dwell there." And he answered, "Go." Then one of them said, "Be pleased to go with your servants." And he answered, "I will go." So he went with them. And when they came to the Jordan, they cut down trees. But as one was felling a log, his axe head fell into the water, and he cried out, "Alas, my master, it was borrowed." Then the man of God said, "Where did it fall?" And when he showed him the place, he cut off a stick and threw it in there and made the iron float. And he said, "Take it up." So he stretched out his hand and he took it. Now, who in the world are the sons of the prophets? These were like the young apprentice prophets. And so they've come to live with Elisha. So probably what's happened is, maybe his house has just always been too small, but probably what's happened is we've added some more apprentices. We've added some more young men who have come who want to learn from Elisha. And so now there's too much for this space. And so, hey, we got an idea. Let's go to the Jordan River, because if you have a river, you have water. And if you have water, you have trees. Okay, the logic just went right by some of you. You have trees, so let's go cut down trees. Now, let's just think about this for a minute. Let each man cut down a log. How many of you have ever cut wood? So, yeah, all right, good. Y'all better than first service. Now, my dad was a firm believer that you never spend a penny that you shouldn't have to. And you think twice before you spend that penny. So, my parents never turned the heater on when I was growing up, ever. My dad heated the house with a fireplace. And he believed that God gave him sons to cut wood for the fireplace. So from the time I was about 11 years old until I moved out, between my junior and senior years of high school, because I figured I might as well go out and get paid if I'm going to work this hard, most Saturdays were spent, if not in the garden, because we're going to raise our own food, because that's cheaper than buying food. That's why I don't have a garden. Or cutting wood for a fireplace, and that's why I don't have a fireplace. And there's some commitments I made that I've stuck to the end. And so now, if you've never cut firewood, trust me, wood's heavy. It's heavy. Can you imagine? I said, okay, look, we're going to build a place. I'm going to cut down a tree, and I'm going to drag it. And you're going to cut down a tree, and you're going to cut down a tree. Well, you couldn't get it, but we're going to cut down a tree. Everybody bring their own tree. You know how heavy these things are? Now, some commentators said, well, they're probably a lightweight wood. I don't care. Even light wood's still heavy if it's the whole tree. And they're going to build a house out of this stuff. So notice what they say. Not let's go cut some logs to make it bigger. They go, let's go and let's make a place for us to dwell there. We'll cut them and we'll build a bigger house right there where we go. And I love Elisha's answer, go. No, that sounds like a great idea. Let's do it. He says, go. Y'all go. That sounds great. Y'all go. Now, Elisha's the old man here, and the apprentices are younger men. So we assume, you don't get any smarter with age, but you can get wiser with age. And so Elisha has gotten wise. Like, man, y'all go cut down as many trees you want, build as big a place as you'd like. And one of them says, well, would you go with us? And I love Elisha's answer. I'll go. Not I'll go cut wood. Not I'll go fell a tree. Not I'll go help you build it. But just, okay, I'll go. Because you need somebody to instruct them. Elisha, he's gotten a great deal of wisdom by this point. So he says, okay, I will go. And that's it. So he went with them, and they're cutting down the trees. And then one of them, the axe head fell into the water. He says, it was borrowed. Now here's where sometimes we struggle when we read the Bible. Because the way we would do things, just not the way they would do them. What we find value, they wouldn't find value. So if I'm cutting something and the axe head flies off, I'm just going to go down to Home Depot and get another one. Or Walmart, Lowe's, Ace. And if I'm not in a hurry, I might order one off Amazon. Like, I'm just going to replace it. It's not that big a deal. So why is this such a huge deal? Because for you and me, we go down to the hardware store and replace it. But in Bible times, there was no hardware store like that. Iron was very difficult to get. Very difficult. They had to hand smelt it. Basically, you had to pump the air and all that. And so iron was a very expensive commodity. He has borrowed it. He has lost something of great value. So what we would think of, the equivalent of this, we would think of is, you have borrowed your friend's diamond earrings and lost them. Diamond earrings, not like the ones your husband got you. That's why you borrowed some. Really go, man, I can't afford to replace them. And so an axe head would have been extremely expensive because iron was very expensive in those days. And so that's why he's very, very concerned. And so Elisha says, where did it fall? Now, it fell in the Jordan River. They're at the Jordan River and it fell in the water. So it's there. And the Jordan River is very clear going into the Sea of Galilee. But when it comes out of the Sea of Galilee, it gets muddy pretty quickly. And so you can't see the bottom. Current's moving pretty rapidly. You don't want to dive in. You want to get carried downstream. And so he's like, it's gone. So he said, where was it? Now, when it says he threw in the stick and made the iron float, some believe that he stuck the stick in the water and kind of fished out the axe head. And that's okay. I mean, but that's not how the text reads. It really reads like the iron was floating on top of the water. And, well, that's really not that big a deal for God. It's not. I mean, it's a miracle. So he makes the iron head to float, and he tells the young man, reach out and grab it. So we see that God cares for us by providing for us. But I want us I was going to regale you with these great stories about how over the years God has done things to provide for us. Multiple children, full-time student, studying German on the side to qualify for PhD work, working 3 part-time jobs and pastoring church on the weekends. Had no time, no money, poor as goat's milk. I start saying no energy, but that really never has defined me. And so, and there were just along the way in my life, there were just many times that God has provided. It's been pretty impressive. But I don't want to do that. I said I want to kind of help us understand this idea of God providing for us. So, do you think that I can get to the back of the church down this aisle? That was weak. Like 6 of you. I don't know what's wrong with y'all. I'm walking. I'm going to get to the back of the church down this aisle. I made it to the back of the church down this aisle. Everybody agree? Yes. Okay, that was big. Like, I don't know if he can make it or not. How much y'all think about me? Can I get to the back of the church down this aisle? Okay, that's better. Y'all do it. Yeah, that's better. But we're going to keep, we're going to keep doing this until everybody's on board. I realize some of you are slower than others, but you're going to get with us. So I made it to the back. I made it down the back on that aisle. I've made it to the back down this aisle. But there are more aisles than that. Do y'all think I can make it to the back down this aisle? Yes. Y'all sound less sure than that one. By the way, my wife's out of town because her mother-in-law is quite ill, so I have nothing to do. I can stay here all day. So y'all just, once you're with me, then we'll know we can move on, or we'll be here till 3. So I made it down to the back, down that aisle, and now down this aisle. So I made the back, down now 3 of those. I wonder, how many of you think I can make it to the back down this aisle? Okay, that was about like where number 2 was. So you're back where you were, so there's still a few who aren't sure. You didn't do well in school, did you? Like, I just don't know if so Get to the back, down this aisle. So we've made it to the back, down that aisle, and this aisle, and then this one right here. Right?
Yes.
Right. If nothing else, hopefully you're awake. They've got several aisles that we can go down to make it to the back. But you know what? We don't have to use an aisle. How many think I can make it to the back over the chairs? There we go. I like the fact that y'all have some confidence. Y'all better make space. I'm coming through. What are you doing? Just relax. I got this. It's fine. It's fine. I got this. Where are you going? Just stay still. I'll make it. Evelyn. Why are you scooting over? I do not need the cane. I'm coming right here between y'all. There we go.
Don't step.
I didn't step on you. I got this. Right? So there are lots of ways to get to the back from the front. Different aisles. You walk over the chair. And you're thinking, what in the world is this bald-headed fool getting to? Right, watch. A lot of different ways to get back there. Sometimes what happens is we get locked into God can only provide one way. Here's what happens. You're really having a very challenging economic situation, and you get an unexpected bonus from work. And what do you say? God provided. Then a couple years later, you're in another difficult economic situation, and you start going to the mailbox looking for another bonus check. But God may provide for you this time a different way. And we have a tendency to kind of want to squeeze God into always sort of doing it the same way. The reality is God provides for us in lots of different ways. And so don't just be looking for one way, because when you do, sometimes you miss what God is doing. So the cool thing is that God does it in a variety of ways. And sometimes they're kind of a one-off way. How many times does an axe head float in the Bible? One. You now know where it is. This is not the way God normally provides, but he can do it this way if he wants to. You know, God could have provided not by the axe head floating, but as they're chopping down a tree, they dig a little hole and discover some gold and can pay for the axe head. Or maybe on the way back to get the rest of his supplies from the original house, he finds another axe head on the side of the road. Like, God's not locked into making it float's the only way to do it. And so we need to realize that when God cares for us and provides for us, he has lots of different ways of doing it. And so that allows us to be surprised by the goodness of God, which leads to us glorifying and worshiping him. So keep your eyes open for what God is doing. Don't think, well, it has to be this way. Because we serve a really cool God who provides in lots of cool and different ways. And so I guarantee you this guy wasn't expecting the axe head to float. You say, well, how do you know that? Because he would have said, Elisha, can you make the axe head float? So it was borrowed. And so God provides for us. God cares for us and provides for us. And we just need to be really careful not to always be thinking it's got to be down that particular aisle. It's the way that God's going to do it. But not only does God provide for us because he cares for us, he also protects us. Look what happens in verse 8. Once, now, modern day, we would say once upon a time, because he's going to tell a story. And so he says, once, when the king of Syria was warring against Israel, he took counsel with his servant, saying, at such and such a place shall be my camp. But the man of God, that will be Elisha, sent word to the king of Israel, beware that you do not pass this place, for the Syrians are gathering down there. And the king of Israel sent to the place about which the man of God told him. Thus he used to warn him, so that he saved himself there more than once or twice. So a number of times, Elisha said, here's where the Syrians are going to be, and delivered the armies of Israel. So verse 11, the mind of the king of Syria was greatly troubled because of this thing. And he called his servants and said to them, will you not show me who of us is for the king of Israel? Now, his perspective is we have a spy. So who is going to tell on the spy? Verse 12, one of his servants said, none, my lord, O king. But Elisha, the prophet who is in Israel, tells the king of Israel the words that you speak in your bedroom. So God gives Elisha the information. Elisha tells the king. Verse 13, he said, go and see where he is, that I may send and seize him. Now, unfortunately, some of you have no sense of humor. And some of you with a sense of humor somehow seem to think that you have to jettison it when you read the Bible, because there's nothing in the Bible that's funny, because God has no sense of humor and never smiles. which could be further from the truth. I like to think of a God who smiles. Zephaniah says that he rejoices over us with singing. So this is one of those things that's quite humorous that God sarcastically drops in the Bible. Go and seize him. Now, God has told Elisha what the king's going to do over and over and over again. Now the king says, hey, y'all go and seize him, as though Elisha wouldn't know what's coming this time. It's just kind of showing off the failure of the king of Syria and where he's at mentally. Like somehow this time it'll be different. So it was told him that he is in Dothan. Verse 14, so he sent their horses and chariots and a great army, and they came by night and surrounded the city. And when the servant of the man of God rose early in the morning, that's my kind of guy. So we'll say this is 4:30. It's not quite early enough, but anyway, 4:30 in the morning. And he went out, and behold, an army with horses and chariots was all around the city. And the servant said, alas, my master, what shall we do? He said, don't be afraid, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them. Then Elisha prayed and said, O Lord, please open his eyes that he may see. So the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. And when the Syrians came down against him, Elisha prayed to the Lord and said, please strike this people with blindness. So he struck them with blindness in accordance with the prayer of Elisha. And Elisha said to them, this is not the way, and this is not the city. Follow me, and I will bring you to the man whom you seek. And he led them to Samaria. As soon as they entered Samaria, which by the way was the capital city, Elisha said, O Lord, open the eyes of these men that they may see. So the Lord opened their eyes, and they saw, and behold, they were in the midst of Samaria. As soon as the king of Israel saw them, he said to Elisha, my father, shall I strike them down? Shall I strike them down? He answered, you will not strike them down. Will you strike down those whom you have taken captive with your sword and with your bow? Set bread and water before them, that they may eat and drink and go to their master. So he prepared for them a great feast, and when they had eaten and drunk, he sent them away. They went to their master. The Syrians did not come again on raids into the land of Israel. Now, there are a number of things that are interesting here, but I want to just point out verse 14. Why do they send an army to surround the city? If you're going to kidnap him, you're not going to surround the city, you're going to sneak into the city. Well, here's why. Surround the city with the armies. What's the city going to do? Close their gates. With the army surrounding the city, food and water cannot get into the city, and no one can get out of the city. So when the people get hungry enough, and they ask the Syrians, what's it going to take to resolve this? What are the Syrians going to say? Give us Elisha. Give us Elisha, and we'll lift the siege of the city. And so that's why they have surrounded the city, because they know at some point people are going to be hungry enough, they'll give up Elisha rather than starve to death. And so they've surrounded the city. So the servant gets up early in the morning, and he sees them. So what are we going to do now? There's an interplay back and forth here between seeing and blindness. And it kind of goes back and forth. So the servant, who's probably one of the sons of the prophets, can see, but he's blinded to what's really going on. So verse 17, Elisha prays and said, Lord, open his eyes that he may see. So Lord, open his eyes, and the mountain is full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. There's this great angelic host all around them. And in the Old Testament in particular, angels are often connected with fire. As a matter of fact, we know from the ancient Near East that most angelic creatures were considered to be serpentine. So what we would call a dragon is actually what we find to be an apt description of many of the angelic creatures in the Bible, particularly seraphim. And so this mountain, it doesn't describe them as human here, because all we have is horses and chariots. So we have all this massive angelic fiery army all around, standing, I guess, behind all the Syrians that have surrounded the city. Now, something interesting I've discovered about angels in the Bible. Angels are dispatched by God oftentimes to deliver a message. But when angels are protecting people, they are not sent by God to protect them. The Bible typically indicates that they were already there. So Jacob goes to sleep, and he has a dream. He sees the angels going up and down, and the direction's important. They were already with him. They're going up to get further instructions coming right back down. They were already with him. These angels are already here. Elijah doesn't say, hey, what do you see? He goes, well, I see an army making its way down from heaven. They're already there. See, you don't have to hope that God will send some angel to help protect you. I'm telling you, God has you surrounded already. And I've seen the way some of you drive, and that's a very good thing. And I don't mean for you, I mean for the rest of us. And so we don't have to think that, well, God says, oh man, they got themselves in kind of a bad spot, let me send an angel. God already is caring for us and protecting us, which is great to know that He's always watching out for us. So these angels are already there surrounding the city. Just the young man couldn't see them, and now he can. So the Syrians come down, and Elisha prays the other way in verse 18, that they would be blind. So he's prayed that the young man would see, and now he's prayed that they would be blind. And so struck them with blindness, and then he leads them to the city of Samaria. This raises questions I can't answer. I don't know. There's not information here. But typically, soldiers are well trained, and you don't just blindly follow the enemy somewhere. So some people think that maybe they're not like completely blind, but that everything's blurry and hazy. They don't really see what's going on. Others think they're blind. But whatever happens is God's doing it. And so Elisha gets them to the city of Samaria. Then when they get there, now they see. So we have a young man who could see but couldn't really see. So now he can really see, he sees the angels. Then we have the soldiers of Syria who can see, but now they're blind. Now they're in the capital city of Samaria, now they can see. And what they see, we're in Samaria. And the king thinks, this is great, I'm going to kill all of my enemies. And so he says, Elisha, am I going to strike them down? Shall I strike them down? He asks twice in verse 21. But we need to understand, we serve a God who is an ethical God. I do not believe my God is unethical. He is an ethical God. He is a moral God. And when someone surrenders in battle, you do not summarily execute them. That is unethical and immoral. In battle, you strike them down. But when someone is surrendered, you don't treat them that way. We don't just kill prisoners because we captured them. That is immoral. It is unethical. And so Elisha says, no, you can't strike. Would you strike down those that you have taken captive by the sword? And so I want to make sure we understand that this is an act of mercy, but it's also a demonstration of God's morality towards us. And then he says, matter of fact, why don't you feed them and send them home? And so he feeds them and extends mercy to them and sends them home. So here's the thing. God doesn't just care for us by providing for us in a whole host and variety of ways that are unexpected. But God is always with us. And God will protect us. God protects His people. John Patton was a missionary in the New Hebrides Islands. And one night, one of the tribes surrounded the mission station with the intention to burn it to the ground and to kill all these foreigners that were coming in and talking about a different God. So he and his wife that night prayed through the night. In the morning when they got up, nothing burned, no one injured, no one killed, and all the tribe had left. About a year later, John Patton ended up leading the chief of that tribe to Christ, to become a Christian, which is really cool. I think it's just awesome because that's the power of our God. And so as he was talking to the chief, he decided to ask him about that night and why he didn't burn down the house and kill everyone. And the chief said, because of all the men who were with you. And John Patton said, we didn't have any men with us. And the chief said, oh no. He said, we saw hundreds of big men holding shining swords surrounding the house, and we weren't about to attempt to attack. Our God takes care of us. He takes care of us. He protects us. He provides for us. So what does that mean we need to do? That means we need to trust Him. So what does trust look like? Well, trust is not what you say. Trust is what you do. So how many of you believe that that wall could hold me up? Wow, you don't think I can walk down an aisle and you don't think I can lean against a wall. I actually believe that the wall will hold me up. But faith isn't saying the wall will hold me up. You know what faith is? Leaning on it. It's holding me up. Do you now believe that it will hold me up? So I hope you already believed it. See, faith in Christ is not saying I think something. Faith in Christ is when we trust Him. We can trust Him to take care of us because He cares for us. We can trust him because he will take care of us. Now, I want to go back and make sure and say, God doesn't always take care of us the way we maybe think that he ought to. Or maybe we think it should happen. I mean, God sent his son into the world born in a barn. A barn. I can tell you that's not the aisle I would have picked. I would have had him born in the best of hospitals. And he had his son die on a cross to pay the penalty for our sin. That's not the aisle I would have picked either. But that's what God did, because he cares so much for us that Jesus would die in our place to pay the penalty for our sin. That's what God has done. We say, well, how do I know God cares about me? Because he sent Jesus Christ to die on the cross. That's how we know. And yet, the Bible didn't end the story there. Jesus rose again the third day, ascended to heaven, and is someday going to come and get us to be with him for the rest of eternity. Do you hear what I'm saying? God doesn't just care for you and provide for you and protect you now. God will preserve you through all of eternity. Forever. Do you realize how awesome that is? That he will take care of me forever. This is a really big deal to me, because when I show up at the judgment seat and I hear, what is your name? And I say, Paul Smith. Is God going to know which one I am? If you show up and say, my name is Kevin Fryrear, one of a kind, but Paul Smith, man, God's going to go, look at the angel and go, do you know which Paul Smith this one is? Angel go, I don't know. Odd or even? It's not like that. God knows me. He knows which Paul Smith I am. He knows that I am one of his. And he will preserve me not just now, but forever. Because he cares for me not just now, but forever. Do you realize how awesome that is? And God doesn't just wait to care for us when we find ourselves between a rock and a hard place. God already has his angels around us. God is already caring for us. Man, what a great God we serve, who cares for his people. Our Heavenly Father, a couple of great stories. Making the axe head float, surrounding the city. Actually, they're already surrounded, but showing the servant that the city was surrounded with an angelic army. God, I pray that we would not go through life like the servant, blind to what you're doing, not seeing how you care for us. But God, I pray that you would open our eyes and help us to not try to look for you to do something a certain way, but to let you surprise us with the way that you do it. Sometimes you might even make an axe head float. So God, we thank you that you care for us. And we thank you most of all that your caring for us has been demonstrated through your Son, Jesus Christ. For it is in his name that we pray. Amen.